All right, folks, as everybody is entering, I just want to share a couple of logistical kinds of things. As you guys are noticing, this is a standard Zoom meeting, right? So everybody has the ability here to turn on your webcam. You can change your name on the screen. You can have a background if you'd like. We'd certainly like to encourage everybody who is here to engage with Sara and Shannon. As you can already see, they are extremely approachable and very, very knowledgeable, very skilled. And so please ask questions. Please come off of mute. Feel free to add any comments. For Shannon and Sara, just so you guys know, I think I mentioned this already, but I'll make sure that I monitor the chat. So if there are any questions that come through via chat, I'll find a pause, right? And I can throw that question out there to you guys as you guys are moving forward with your presentation. As Kevin mentioned during the keynote, all of our breakout sessions are being recorded. All of the recordings are going to end up on our Edmentum YouTube channel, Edmentum Illinois YouTube channel. So if you have any colleagues who are not able to be with us today, you can make sure that you access those recordings of all the sessions on the Edmentum Illinois YouTube channel. Please make sure that you use hashtag EdmentumIL in any of your tweets here this morning during the conference. And we've already seen a bunch come through, so please continue to do so. Keep the conversation going through social media, and we'll make sure that we get you entered into a raffle where we'll pick a winner for a copy of Lisa's book and an Amazon gift card. So please make sure that you do that. With all those housekeeping things out of the way, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Sara Weaver, Shannon Ryan, high school rock stars from Harvard District 50 up in McHenry County, Illinois. I've known both Sara and Shannon for quite a while now, and I've had the opportunity to actually present with Shannon at the III conference last November, again, talking about differentiation at the high school level. So they are really, really knowledgeable in the area of differentiation at the high school level, and how that can certainly create an environment of equity in a classroom setting. So I'm very, very thrilled to learn from them here today, and I know that you guys are going to learn quite a bit here today. So I'm going to pass it over to Sara and Shannon for them to introduce themselves as well. So welcome, guys. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, everybody, for attending, and we wanted to also thank Jason and Edmentum for this exciting opportunity to share with you our experiences. We love memes in our department at Harvard High School, so we thought we would start with a couple memes to describe how we were feeling. This would be, oops, I missed one.
Oh yeah.
March 13th. This is how we were feeling, and then we left school, and I'm sure like many others, this is how we felt. Shannon, anything to add?
No, that pretty much sums it up right there. Yeah, we love memes, and we'll more times than not respond in a group email via department with memes. Memes. Yeah, we try to keep that very fun. But yeah, that feeling was, I think, sums it up pretty well.
So here's who we are. My name is Sara Weaver, and I'm the division chair at Harvard High School for Science, Agriculture, PE, Health, and Driver's Ed. And I also teach some of our elective science classes.
I'm Shannon Ryan. I teach science at the high school. I teach chemistry and biology 2 honors. I'm also the vertical science team lead for the district. Right now, I'm also teaching SOAR, which is our summer enrichment program. So I've been doing that the entire summer via Zoom. So yeah, I got some experience with that as well.
All right.
All right, so today what we're going to talk about is kind of our experience with Edmentum pre-March 13th and then post-March 13th, and kind of how we utilized Edmentum with our differentiation. We'll talk a little bit about how we've utilized it in the summer as well through summer school and the SOAR program that I've been doing. We'll also talk about what's worked well for us, things that we really stick with, and then we also are going to talk about things that we've learned and some challenges that we're facing.
So before the March 13th pandemic, when we left school, we used Edmentum for intervention for some of our struggling learners, also prevention. We used it for differentiation. We used it for lesson planning and instructional delivery and alternative assignments. So we're gonna talk about how we've used it in each of these different areas.
So this is an example of an intervention. This was a unit that we did in chemistry on the periodic table and just different patterns that they have to know about the periodic table. This specific student did not master the content and the formative assessments and failed the summative assessment as well. Through the time that has gone by, this said student, we are on to a different unit. The student still has not mastered the previous unit, setting them up to possibly fail the class. All right, so this is going to be a constant trend that maybe we're going to notice with some kids. So in this specific scenario, I made it a point to find this said student, have a conversation with them, saying, look, I see what's going on here. I want to try to, get you caught up with the previous unit, have you understand that these are important learning targets for you to master. And here's how we're going to do it. So I set this said student up in Edmentum. We created this course as a department. And the things that are circled here in red, like the 80%, are once the student has finished a tutorial, they took a mastery test, and those specific numbers will go in as their formative grades. So now the student has taken what they had before, and we've replaced those grades in the grade book. We're not standard based yet. We're working on it, but right now we're 0 to 100. So we would take those 80% and put them in the grade book. Once we've seen that the student has done this, then we could turn around and give the student the summative test and say, okay, we see that you're ready, and then they would take the summative at a different time, maybe in class, maybe during a study hall that they have. Or if situations happen, they could just have that post-test count as their summative. I think we've been a little flexible with that too. So this is an example of an intervention.
We also had a student in our forensic science class who was a senior. It's an elective, and she missed an entire unit on the crime scene. She had a absentee issue and missed the entire unit. And so when she came back, we were able to push out through Edmentum a crime scene unit to her. So she had a chance to get some of that content and recover her grade as well.
Okay, so what we've done as a department and within each of the subject areas is we've already created a curriculum that aligns to our learning targets. So this has already been done through some work ahead of time. And this work is meaningful because we have created the curriculum. We know what's important for our kids to learn and would give them the most longevity in their learning from grade to grade and in their career choices and in the future. This specific assessment that I gave my Bio 2 class has to do with an assessment that they had, and then I arranged their retakes or their reassessments based on the learning targets that they didn't master. So go ahead and you can change the slide to the next one. And so basically what we're going to look at here is like student A didn't master like microevolution and speciation, so they had to do those ones. But they did like the gene frequencies and adaptive evolution. Like this is so dorky science stuff, but in the Bio 2 level, they had to do this. Like this was a learning target. But I blocked those out. So that's all they had to do was go back and show me that they know that stuff. and then they would get their credit back on their assessment, on their summative. And then you can go to the next one. And then this person was different. They did not master their gene frequencies in microevolution, so then they did that instead, and I blocked out the other things that they mastered. So in Edmentum, it gives you a lot of freedom to be able to say, okay, this student needs this skill, this target, and only that target. And I'm going to block everything else out and just have them be able to do that thing. All right, and then when you show me you know it, then that's the credit that you get, okay? All right.
One of the things that we've done is use some of the information that's available in the course catalog from Edmentum to kind of help with our scope and sequence. I used that a couple of years ago to kind of map out the order in which I wanted to teach units in forensic science. And the reason I did that was it also then gave me the ability, when we had a student who needed something to recover, we had that unit available. So we used it a little bit for scope and sequence. It's a good tool for short-term and long-term subplans if somebody needs to be out, but they still want kids to be actively learning and assessing. It's a good tool for that. And we kind of feel like it just gives us another tool, another resource just to keep us fresh and to keep things interesting. This is just to show you, this is the course pacing guide and kind of the overview of the forensic science that was available in Edmentum, which I utilized a little bit to help me plan out my own class. And then for alternate assignments, we do some dissection in our human anatomy and physiology class. And I had a student who opted out of that, actually a couple students that opted out of the dissections. And so I was able to build for them a flex assignment in Edmentum. And so while the kids in class were working on learning about the body through some dissection, these kids were learning about the same systems of the body, but through an Edmentum flex assignment that I had created. So they continued to have productive work. We also have had a couple of students do independent studies with us. I had a student sign up for a forensic science independent study last semester, and I was looking forward to utilizing some things through Edmentum, but then the pandemic hit, and so that was cut short. But Shannon tried a really interesting approach. We had a student who wants to be a high school chemistry teacher, and he signed up to do an independent study with our department to kind of help kids with labs, to do some tutoring, and just to kind of see what it feels like to be a teacher. And so when we left school after March 13th, Shannon was able to actually find and build for him like a teacher class in Edmentum for him to work on if he wanted to further that study. And then we can also use it for some enrichment. There's some courses available in Edmentum that we just can't offer logistically or feasibly, and so there's that opportunity for students as well. There's opportunities for review for upcoming AP classes. There's opportunities for ACT and SAT practice. Shannon was planning to do some work with his homeroom. Shannon, maybe you can speak more to that, some SAT practice that you were going to set up for them.
Yeah, I think I set that up first semester, and I got all of my homeroom is basically my kids for 4 years. I get them as freshmen, and then I see them off as seniors. I get some that can join later. I lose some if they don't pass the grade and go on with us. But the junior year was important, and I had, instead of Khan Academy, I used Edmentum of the SAT prep to put it in there, because I like using it because I can monitor their progress. And then when they get their practice tests back in the fall, I can look and say, okay, you know, this person's a little bit low in math, so I think I want to focus the SAT prep for you in math or reading. So let's have you start focusing more on your reading. And then I would kind of I would use that as my skill or my tool to help their time in homeroom be a little bit more productive as well.
Mm-hmm. So after the March 13th dismissal from school, we continued to use the Edmentum program, but we used it a little bit differently. We had some different units that we created to try to help kids. Since we weren't grading new material, we also wanted to kind of continue with where they left off. And I think I actually may have stolen Shannon's slide, so.
Oh, it's okay, we're all good. Basically, at the beginning, and I think throughout the post March 13th, the students remained pretty high in engagement through Edmentum, and we have data to kind of back this up so you guys can kind of see what it looked like. It was off the charts. And then basically after I attended the first Mind the Gap conference during the pandemic time when we were remote learning, and then I did it again just this past, I think it was 2 weeks ago maybe. But they started preaching about superhero targets and learning targets. So it's like, these are your learning targets. These are the ones that are even more superhero-like. So now as a department and as a chemistry PLC, we've created learning targets, and then we've bolded the superhero learning targets on those. So when the kids get their learning targets, if anything were to change and we go remote, or we these are the ones we absolutely need to know. Like, you need to know this. And these are kind of need to know, but these are really need to know. And so that's what we're going to kind of focus on this year. You know, so we've planned ahead, we've put it a little forward. So it's like, now we're ready to be a little bit more flexible. And the kids know that now too, that this is what they need to know. Mm-hmm. Okay. This was their time on task through the time where we were post March 13th. The middle spike, this is kind of funny. The in between November 1st and January 1st, that's like right at the end of the semester, you know, so the kids are desperately trying to recover some credit before the semester ends. So you see how it kind of spikes up a little bit right there. But like then it goes after the pandemic, and then it just like, you can see how it spikes way up, and then it kind of stays up, and it goes on a weekend, and then does it again. So those are our kids, and they're pretty engaged. Here's some examples of classes that you can see with the kids, the amount of kids that spent time within each of the classes. Biology apparently is killing it with the amount of hours that they had, but we had a lot of kids on time, and doing time. Yeah.
So one of the things that we've developed in our department is a blended science course that we offer as part of our summer school curriculum. And when we say blended science, it's blended because part of the instruction is live, teacher taught, and part of the instruction is through Edmentum. So it's a 4-week class, and we went through, and it's primarily freshmen who are trying to recover a semester of freshman science credit, so they're ready to start their sophomore year in chemistry. So we went through and we identified what do they really, really need to know to be ready for chemistry. And so we started off with a week of kind of the scientific method and lab safety and those kinds of things. We did a couple weeks of earth science and physical science because that's our freshman science course. And then we ended with kind of a bridge to chemistry. We did a little bit of chemistry so the kids would see some familiar things when they started that class in the fall. And we kind of decided what's going to work best: live, teacher taught. Are there certain lab activities we want to do? Are there certain, you know, cooperative activities we want to do? And we made sure we taught those things live. And then other things were taught through Edmentum, through kids working more independently. And so this year, when we had summer school was all online. And so the teachers had daily, probably about 2.5 to 3 hours of live instruction through Zoom. And then the kids had some time on their own to do some Edmentum work, which the teachers can still monitor. They can monitor the progress. But here's just a look at some of the information that went out in the syllabus to the kids. When they were in summer school from 8 to noon, they had classwork, participation, independent assignments, and then Edmentum was a part of their grade. And what we did is, through the different tutorials that they do, they had to be, we wanted them to be at least at a level of 80% mastery to be considered complete. And we're going to show you a screen in a little bit where we kind of monitored kids. But if kids did not get to that level of mastery and they got locked out, then we had steps that we put in place for them to get unlocked. They had to take some notes, show us that they were actively working through the tutorials, and then we could unlock it for them to go back and try again. And Shannon's going to talk a little bit about SOAR because that's a program he is currently involved in.
So we had 3 sections of SOAR. This has been running the entire summer. And this is an example of how I've used SOAR, which is another product through Edmentum, which is called Study Island. And I created, these are all students that are going to be sophomores. So they are going to be in chemistry. And what I'm trying to do is to just get them school ready, maybe get them a little bit more into the understanding of chemistry, so that when we start school, like they would feel just a little bit more comfortable about the content. And then they could just focus on just trying to just be a student, you know. And I did this, I have juniors, so I have them set up in biology. And then I have some AP students who are taking chemistry, and I have them set up in chemistry for AP. So each specific student is doing a little bit of something different, and I'll take the Zoom call and up into different rooms, and they'll all do their different things. Also, something that I focused on in the SOAR program, and so it was Study Island, which was this part, so I could see their progress, and I could click on things and see like the questions that they missed, and we can go over those. Another part was something that we identified as a science department, which was being able to write in science and being able to collect data and generate and build a CER. So like make a claim and support it with evidence and then argue it with reasoning. And that's really important throughout all curriculum. So in cross content of any class. So we really focused on that a lot too. So I would ask them a question like, okay guys, like why are plants green? And they would look at me like, are you really asking me that right now? Or why do plants change color in the fall? And they didn't know it. And I was like, that's awesome. Let's make a CER. Let's do it right now. And so they would build it, and they would choose a question. They would put evidence. I would make them put like pictures and graphs and anything they could find, because that's what they're supporting. And then I want them to argue it and with reasoning, but I want them to nerd out on science words. Like they have to say the word chlorophyll, you know, like that has to be in there. And they have to use the word wavelength and specific wavelengths. So at the end, they've generated the CER that's so dorky and nerdy, but they did it. And then I turn around and have them present it on Flipgrid, so they have to talk about it. So it's even more of a like, okay, you're writing in science, that's great, but now you got to tell me it. Like you literally have to say the word chlorophyll, right? So they did it, and they I'm pretty sure they all know why plants are green. So that's great.
We should mention probably that SOAR is a program that our district put in place, K-12. It was optional, and something that students did not for a grade or credit recovery, but just to kind of bridge the gap from lost learning from spring to make them a bit more ready for next fall.
Okay, so things that have worked well for us. These are the feel-good things that we've experienced as a school or just as a department, because we use this through many different avenues at District 50. We can customize this to meet all students' needs. And I think that that's really important, especially now when we need to differentiate more than we have in the past, I would say. And then we can monitor their progress, and we can actually set up specific times and check-ins with students so they can work at their own pace. We also can give them lots of options. So here, if you would rather work on this, or we have a lab, you could do it virtually, you could do it live. You know, like I noticed that you've been missing quite a few days of class. You've been absent. You know what's going on. You can have a real conversation with the kid, and say, you know what, like if you're missing that much class and things have been going on, then you know, here's what you can do online, and you can do this at any time during your day if you're here or not. And then you can still stay with us. And I think that that's been huge for some of our kids. And then we are, I think, right, Weaves, that we're 100% connected District 50 now. Like everybody has like a hotspot at least. So everybody can get access to this.
Hey, Shannon and Sarah, just wanted to mention there was a question that came in via chat about the acronym CAR.
Oh, CER.
Yeah, so CERs are claim evidence response or reasoning. And I will give them an essential question like the why are leaves green, or why do plants change color in the fall? And they have to make a claim. And the claim is just a real specific sentence. It's not a hypothesis, but it's a very direct sentence that answers the question. And then evidence is what they use to support their claim. And then their reasoning is what they use to kind of tie the bow in it, and they argue it with their reasoning. So I actually take it a step further, and I say to them, like, you know, usually if you go and you like ask your mom or dad, or you ask somebody for something, like let's say you want like a new Xbox, and you just ask them, hey, can I get this new Xbox? You know, probably the answer might be no. But if you present it in a CER format with evidence and reasoning as to why you think you need this Xbox, like the response back to you might actually be yes. And so like we actually have a student at the high school. She wants to take over one of our teachers' desks in our main little office science area.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, this is great. So she wrote a CER as to why she should take over this desk. So she wants to remove a teacher from this office and take over their desk. So she's going to be a senior. She wrote this CER, and we talked about it as a department, and we voted as to why the student should have this desk, because she's going to spend more time in the science wing than anybody else. She's taking more science classes than anyone else.
She's taking 4 science classes this fall, and needs a place to put her stuff, and
So this totally makes sense. So, you know, I apologize, but our colleague, Mr. Eulin, is going to have to relocate his desk because she's taking it. You know, like the CER was great.
He was voted out of the office.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then along with things that have worked well for us, we've had some challenges, and, you know, we've learned some lessons. And one of the biggest things we've learned, and this was especially true with summer school, is Edmentum might not be the best fit for all special education students. It really depends on what the accommodations are in their IEP. And so I think it's really important to look at what the student's disability is and what accommodations they have to determine if the program is a good fit. A couple of years ago in summer school, we had a student who his disability was more behavioral. He couldn't sit still. He had some other issues, but because he could kind of pick up his Chromebook and go work at a lab table, or he could work on Edmentum from home, he was very successful. So it really is, it's important to look at those kids individually. We did have this spring some mindset issues that we had to address as soon as they popped up. We had a group of kids that were in a little bit of trouble grade-wise, and were not trying in class because they were waiting for us to just give up and stick them in our Harvard Academy class, which is where we do all online credit recovery. And they said, we're just going to take it there. It'll be easier. And we said, I don't think you're underestimating the program. And first of all, but we really had to kind of, nip that and say, no, you're going to stay in class. And this is a part of what you do, but it's also important that you're there working on things with your classmates. We've also learned that we can create, as Shannon showed with a couple of his examples, a skeleton model of a course and then hide sections students don't need. So that allows us to customize it a little bit more. We don't want kids, if they've already mastered a learning target, we don't want them going through it again and again if they don't need to. And then another really important thing for us was to keep all stakeholders in the loop with how students are doing. And stakeholders would be parents, obviously, but also guidance counselors, homeroom teachers, administration. And I want to just show you an example. So this is a snapshot of a class section that teachers can see. And so a couple years ago in summer school, we had a student report to his guidance counselor, yeah, I'm almost done with the Edmentum portion of summer school, so I'm in great shape. And the guidance counselor said something to me about that, and I said, no, he's not. Well, what you can see is if you look, oops, Sara? I don't know what happened here. Sara did something she shouldn't have. Okay. There's a little tech challenge sometimes. So you can see that we have over on the right side kind of a time on task. So like student 1 has spent a total of 20 minutes in the program, but he's green. So what that is telling me is that this is a student who's clicking through really fast. But if you look at the percentage that they're earning, they're not passing. So that was something that, we had to say to the guidance counselor is, yeah, he's most of the way through, but he's just clicking. He's not actually reading the tutorials and doing the interactive parts. And then like another example would be like students 3 and 4, they're doing really well, but you can see from the time that they've been spending over 5 and over 4 hours in the program. So they're really taking their time and working through the program. So that was something that we kind of had to explain, to people that we can get a lot of information from this program about how kids are doing, and then we can share that out with them.
And then do you want to talk about, I can talk about student 7.
Oh, sure, talk about student 7.
Yeah. So student 7 has also, I don't know, they've gone through the program, but they've been locked out. So at some point, they've kind of went through the tutorials and got on the mastery test, and they get locked out at some point because they have to go back through the tutorial in order to retake this mastery test. They can't just keep retaking it. So they've been locked out 3 times. So at some point, we would have to address student 7 and say, I see you've been locked out. Why don't you show me some work, some notes? Why don't I ask you a question real quick and let me know if you're ready? And that will unlock you. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how we would handle student 7.
And that's something that we did very actively with the summer school kids, is we said, we'll happily unlock you, but you have to show us some notes that you've gone back through the tutorial, you've read, you've tried to pull out key pieces of information. All right, questions for us?
Yeah, definitely encourage folks to come off of mute if you'd like to. I don't see any unanswered questions, guys, here in the chat as of right now. One thing I did want to point out, which I think you guys do an absolutely phenomenal job of, is I think this really came through as you guys were talking, right? It's just the idea of the connections that you create with your students. It just comes out loud and clear. And, you know, the idea of relationships when it comes to teacher student is just critical, you know, as far as creating an environment. I mean, you know, empathy, you know, as Lisa was talking about in the keynote, right? I mean, you know, empathy is important in the classroom these days, and it really starts with, I think, you know, creating those relationships with the students, right? So then you can really walk a mile in their shoes, right? And get a feel for, you know, where it is that they're coming from. So kudos to you guys.
I'm sorry.
No, Sarah, I was just going to say kudos to you guys for all of your efforts to really create those lasting relationships with the kids.
To that point, I would share that I think it was 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, we had a group of students that did not pass our first semester freshman science class. And so we decided to give them the opportunity to recover that credit second semester through Edmentum while they were taking the second semester science class live. And there were pros and cons of it, but that particular year, the teacher that kind of monitored it pushed it out to them, and at the end of the time frame, I think we gave them about 2 months, he looked at it and said, 3 of you did the work, here's where you're at, boom. And we had a group that hadn't, you know, done anything. And so we looked at that and we said, we really have to do a better job of working with the kids and monitoring the kids. So the next year we did it again, and we had a different, we had a pair of teachers that were in charge of it, and they set up a weekly check-in with the kids where the kids had to come to them during our homeroom time and check in. They were tracking kids down and really, you know, connecting with those kids and touching base with them. And as you said, building that relationship with them. And so the second time we had a much higher success rate. So that's definitely a very key piece.
I had a question. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Go ahead, Chad.
My computer's glitchy with Zoom from time to time. It was more about the CAR method. Is there a typical prompt you use or a generic prompt you use for those type of lessons or activities? Just a generic one that you could share possibly, or is it just very organic in how it evolves?
Oh, it's a CER, so it's claim, evidence, and reasoning. But yeah, I have a template that I use, and I can share it with Jason, and he can put it into the folder so you guys can have access to it. That's no problem, for sure.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I think we developed a template as a department as well, so that kids had some consistency going through the different levels. Here's also, this might be a good time to share, there's our contact information if anybody wanted to reach out to either one of us, email or Twitter.
And Chad, wanted to thank you for your participation there. And anybody else, questions, comments, thoughts for Sara and for Shannon on this idea of, you know, again, you know, what differentiation, remote learning, you know, how it looked for them, or how it is looking for them, I would say.
I will also add as well, sorry, I'll talk again.
Oh, please do.
With the SOAR method, I thought that was a really cool idea to get them doing the thinking and doing the research, though. The why are plants green, especially and there's obviously a lot of questions of why things are the way they are right now in regards to race issues and economics. I think it's just a very general, good question I can use myself with the students. Just, well, why are things the way they are? I taught for years a class that was basically a year-long class that was Reconstruction up to today. And the focus really was on nailing our butterfly effect timeline came from Reconstruction's failure. You know, we wouldn't be in this maybe boat arguably if it hadn't been for the failure of Reconstruction. So, but instead of me just saying, well, here's how we got here, putting them in that boat to say, well, why are we here? What events caused this? What built this timeline that we live in right now? So it was a kind of cool way for me as a teacher who always felt that it was important for me to make sure they at least were exposed material to put the ball in their court. So I really like that SOAR analogy a lot. I definitely think it's going to be helpful for me this year, using Edmentum for the first time as my primary way of teaching, if you will. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks, Chad. Maybe we've got a few more minutes here before we'll take a little break and then jump into our next breakout session. But Shannon and Sara, maybe on some kind of closing thoughts, right? Maybe address kind of the elephant in the room, right? Just with the idea of, kind of where we're at right now, with this, current state of, of education, and kind of what your thoughts are as you're preparing for, what's going to be a very different start to a new school year.
I guess I could start because I've been experiencing it with the kids already. And I think to develop relationships with our kids now, it might be a little bit more challenging because we have them remotely, and it could be a combination of. So I think how I might start this year is arranging times to meet with specific kids and have like specific times where I schedule to meet with a set student. So if I have first block of 90 minutes, I want to meet with these 3 kids at 8 o'clock, these 3 different kids at 8:10. So like now I can connect with just a few kids and talk with them and share things with them. And then if I feel like I need to see them again for some intervention, then I can have them come back later in the block of time to come back and check in on them. I think having a large group setting in Zoom or whatever format we're going to use, I think it's going to kind of be a nightmare right now. And to get all the kids on at the same exact time and think that's going to work with the internet that they have, or internet that I have, or anyone, and then everyone has to show their face, so I need to see your face, turn on your camera, and it's like, hey, everybody, let's wait for them to turn on their camera. So, it's going to be, as far as I know, I think that might be a little bit easier to try to set up so you have a little more individual meetings so you can develop those relationships too.
I think I happen to sit on our district's Return to Learn planning committee. So I can tell you the level of stress that we're experiencing, just, wondering what fall is going to look like. But one thing that I think we've learned from surveys that we have sent out to our community and our families is that it's going to be super important, regardless of what fall looks like, for the kids to see their teachers. And I think that was something that was missing a little bit in the spring, is we weren't necessarily synchronous. And so I think that's going to be really important, is that there's check-ins where they can see my face, I can see their face. And I know one of the happiest days I had in the spring was when I actually got onto a Zoom call and there were kids there. I'm like, I can see you. So I think that's just going to be, regardless of whether we're online or we're in some type of a hybrid, I think that's just going to be really important, is that they see us and they interact with us in some way.
Well, and Sara, I know that you're on that committee, but I will definitely say that you guys are keeping your sense of humor. I see that your superintendent is here on the call today, and I saw a tweet from him just the other day about the fact that the irony of having a Return to Learn committee meeting via Zoom, the irony of that is not lost on him, right? So I just appreciate the fact that you guys are, smiling and keeping your sense of humor and laughing along the way and just trying to, make the best out of a very, very difficult situation.
Right.
So again, that's, again, kudos to all of you guys and all your hard work. Other thoughts from the group here, just as far as, what you're thinking about, starting the new school year here as we take the last few minutes here before we end the session.
Well, Jason, I gotta cut out because I gotta fight. So I'm gonna say thank you, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your summer and stay safe. If you want to contact me, you can use my email. But I'm gonna go jump on an airplane, and wish me luck. And I'll see you guys in August.
Great job, Shannon. Thank you.
Safe travels, Shannon.
Safe travels. Yep. Any other closing thoughts from the group here, just as you guys are thinking about the start of the new school year?
Nobody wants to think about it.
Well, let me just take one last look here at the chat, make sure that there's not anything else that has come in. Any questions, that is. We hear a lot of kudos here, Sarah, so make sure that you take a look at the chat here before you.
I will.
Just a lot of very kind words from folks here who have been in the session.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely.
All right. There we go.
And again, just a few last minute things here as we get ready to get to our next session. Thank you again for attending Sara and Shannon's session here this morning. Sara, awesome job, phenomenal. Thank you for agreeing to be a part of the conference here today and to present. And we wish you all a great conference here for the next 2 breakout sessions. And again, if you have anybody who who's going to be joining late, please make sure that you share that invitation with them and they can register for those later breakout sessions. And please remember to use social media to keep the conversation going. Use that hashtag #AdmentumIL. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone. Thank you. Stay safe.
Thanks.